Trade tensions are rising between the US and India. In March 2025, a US trade team arrived in New Delhi for talks. President Trump has set an April 2nd deadline to impose new tariffs on countries with trade imbalances, and India is on the list. Brendan Lynch, the US trade representative for South and Central Asia, is leading the talks. The US says it wants a fair trade relationship with India, but the pressure is clear. India currently has a trade surplus of $4 billion with the US, meaning it exports more than it imports. Trump has criticized this and called India a tariff king because of its high import taxes. India's average tariffs are around 12% compared to 2% in the US. Trump wants a more balanced deal under his America First policy. India's government is trying to sound hopeful. A junior commerce minister said both sides are working on a new trade agreement to ease market access and lower tariffs. These talks are part of ongoing high-level discussions that have gained momentum since Trump returned to office. India's Prime Minister Modi visited Washington, followed by India's Trade Minister making an urgent trip to the US. The goal is to finalize the first phase of a trade deal by autumn 2025. Both sides want to increase US-India trade from $190 billion to $500 billion, but achieving this won't be easy. Reports suggest India may reduce tariffs on over half of all US imports, affecting $23 billion worth of trade. This is an attempt to avoid Trump's retaliatory tariffs. Trump believes in reciprocal tariffs, meaning if a country charges high tariffs on US goods, the US should do the same in return. However, this approach is complicated and could harm allies. Recently, Trump hinted that the White House may not enforce full tariffs on all countries. He said the US may take less than what they're charging. This uncertainty makes planning difficult for countries like India. Businesses and investors worry that changing trade policies could slow investment, disrupt supply chains, and increase costs. Trade is just one part of US-India relations. The two countries are strengthening defense ties, especially due to China's influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Neither side wants a trade dispute to hurt security cooperation. At the same time, India wants better access to the US market as it tries to grow its manufacturing sector. Lowering tariffs on US goods could attract more American companies to India, creating jobs and economic growth. For the US, trade with India is also important. India's growing economy and large population make it an attractive market for American businesses. Smoother trade could help US companies in sectors like agriculture, energy, and technology. But with Trump's deadline approaching, both sides must show progress or risk a new trade conflict. Trump is also pushing tariffs beyond traditional trade issues. He recently announced a 25% tariff on US imports from any country that buys oil from Venezuela. This targets China, India, and Spain. Trump says this is not just about trade, but also about punishing Venezuela's government. The US has long criticized Venezuela for authoritarian rule and economic mismanagement, but this move expands US pressure tactics. Now, Venezuela's oil buyers must choose between continuing trade with Venezuela or facing US tariffs. China and India are major buyers of Venezuelan oil. While China may not be heavily impacted, India could face tough choices. The US's growing use of tariffs for foreign policy adds uncertainty to global markets. After Trump's tariff announcement, oil prices rose by over 1%, reflecting concerns about supply disruptions. In Venezuela, the situation is already difficult. The country faces inflation, shortages, and political instability. Losing major buyers like India and China would worsen its crisis. While Venezuela has little power to retaliate, China and India might push back. China is already in a trade war with the US, and this new issue could strain relations further. India is also balancing its ties with both the US and Venezuela. Energy security is a key concern, and India wants to maintain its oil supply while keeping strong trade relations with the US. At the same time, India is trying to benefit from the US-China trade war by attracting global manufacturers. In places like Tamil Nadu, India, workers are already seeing changes. Many young women from rural areas are finding jobs at factories like Foxconn where iPhones are made. With the US targeting China, India hopes to become a global manufacturing hub. It has been working for years to attract foreign companies by improving infrastructure and reducing trade barriers. During the pandemic, countries realized they relied too much on China for essential goods. Many looked for alternatives, and India positioned itself as a solution. For India, this is not just about economic growth, but also job creation, especially for women. Tamil Nadu, known for efficient governance, has become a major manufacturing center. Foxconn shifted some iPhone production from China to India in 2017. Today, India produces 15% of all iPhones and aims to reach 25%. This shift has transformed lives. Young workers earning $170 a month now have financial independence. Former government advisor Arvind Subramanian supports manufacturing because it helps lift people out of poverty. India had hoped the US would take a tougher stance against China, making India a top choice for manufacturers. However, Trump's recent tariffs on China have been lower than expected, only 20% instead of the promised 60%. This has raised concerns in India. Some believe figures like Elon Musk, whose companies rely on China, may be influencing Trump's decisions. Although India is attracting business, it hasn't seen the dramatic shift it expected. Its own trade relationship with the US also has problems. The US is India's largest trading partner, but trade is unbalanced. India had a $45 billion surplus with the US last year, which Washington wants to change. High tariffs on US goods remain a major issue. As the trade talks continue, both sides face pressure. The outcome will impact not just India and the US, but also global trade and investment.